The late afternoon sun cast long golden shadows across the immaculate football pitch. The stadium seats stood empty, yet the field buzzed with the faint echoes of past games, the roar of the crowd, the thunder of victory, the heartbreak of loss. At midfield, a man in his 40s stood quietly, hands clasped behind his back. His suit jacket rippled lightly in the breeze. His gaze swept across the green, steady and reflective, as if he were surveying more than grass and goalposts, as if he were looking at a lifetime of dreams fulfilled. But tranquility rarely lasts. From the far tunnel, two security guards emerged, their radios crackling. They noticed him instantly, this lone figure in polished shoes and tailored slacks, standing where only players and coaches normally belonged. Their steps quickened, their brows furrowed. One muttered under his breath, "Another trespasser. Doesn't anyone read the signs?" The taller guard raised his hand, already preparing to bark orders. They didn't ask who he was, didn't consider why he stood there so confidently. All they saw was a black man on the field, out of place in their eyes. The man's lips curved faintly at the edges, not in arrogance, but in quiet amusement. He had expected this moment. He almost welcomed it. What the guards didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that the man they were about to confront didn't just have permission to stand on that field. He owned it. His name was David Cole, 42 years old, son of working-class parents who believed in grit and persistence. He had grown up in a modest neighborhood where the local football club wasn't just entertainment. It was identity, pride, and community. As a boy, David would press his face against the iron gates of the old stadium, straining to glimpse the players warming up. Tickets were luxuries his family could rarely afford, but his imagination was free. He dreamed not of scoring goals under blinding lights, but of building something bigger, of owning a piece of the very world that once seemed locked away from him. Years passed. David studied finance, then sports management. He worked brutal hours in boardrooms that didn't welcome him, fighting battles others never saw. He was dismissed, underestimated, and sometimes outright ignored. But he didn't fold. Every no sharpened him. Every door slammed in his face became fuel. By the time he turned 40, David had built a reputation as a shrewd investor with a rare eye for undervalued opportunities. When the struggling Crescent City Football Club quietly went up for sale, David saw more than a business deal. He saw destiny. And he bought it. The field he now stood upon wasn't just turf. It was the canvas of his triumph. Yet in the eyes of two approaching guards, he was just another man trespassing where he didn't belong. "Hey, you there!" The taller guard's voice thundered across the pitch, startling a flock of pigeons from the bleachers. "This area is restricted. No visitors allowed." David turned his head slowly, his calm gaze meeting theirs. He said nothing yet. He simply waited. The second guard, younger and jittery, added with a sharp edge, "Didn't you see the signs? Authorized personnel only. Step off the field now." David tilted his chin, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. He remained exactly where he was. The guards exchanged a look. To them, his stillness was defiance. They started across the grass, their heavy boots trampling the pristine turf. The tall one barked again, louder this time. "Sir, I'm not going to repeat myself." Off the field. Now. David finally spoke, his voice smooth, deliberate. "And if I don't?" The younger guard snorted. "Then we escort you out." Simple as that. The taller guard narrowed his eyes, stepping closer. "You don't want trouble, friend. You're already someplace you shouldn't be." David chuckled softly under his breath. The sound wasn't mocking. It was measured, knowing. "Is that so?" he murmured. From the stands, a few maintenance workers paused their tasks, watching the exchange unfold. To them, it looked like security confronting a stranger. They whispered among themselves, curious but silent. This was how it always began. Assumptions made at first glance. A man's suit didn't matter. His calm demeanor didn't matter. His very presence was treated as intrusion. David wasn't angry. Not yet. He had lived long enough to recognize the weight of perception, the way some eyes carried suspicion before a single word was exchanged. But today, he wasn't just another man enduring it. Today, he held the upper hand. "Sir, The tall guard repeated, his tone hardening. This is your last warning. Step off the field or we'll remove you. David's gaze lingered on the towering stand surrounding him. Memories of his boyhood self flashed, nose pressed to those same gates, dreaming of one day belonging. He turned back to the guards, his voice firm but calm. I think I'll stay right where I am. The younger guard stiffened. That's it. We're done asking. He reached for his radio. Control, we've got an unauthorized individual on the pitch, requesting backup. The taller guard moved closer, jabbing a finger toward David's chest. You picked the wrong day, pal. You don't just wander onto this field. Who do you think you are? David's eyes locked onto the man's. His voice dropped, deliberate and steady. Funny you should ask. The taller guard squared his shoulders, towering inches over David. His finger jabbed again, sharper this time, as if trying to puncture the calm that radiated from the man in the tailored suit. Answer me, he demanded. Who do you think you are, strolling in here like you own the place? David didn't flinch. His voice remained measured, his tone clipped but steady. I'm someone who belongs here. The younger guard scoffed, gripping his radio tighter. Belongs? I've worked this job 3 years, and I've never seen your face once. You're trespassing. The air thickened. From the upper decks, the maintenance workers whispered louder, their curiosity sharpening into interest. Phones emerged from pockets, screens angled downward, recording. David glanced at the glowing devices, knowing all too well what it meant. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was a stage. Every word, every glance, every gesture would ripple beyond this field. By now, more staff had gathered near the tunnel. Groundskeepers, junior employees, even a few interns staying late. Whispers spread quickly. Who is he? Why's security so riled up? Looks like a VIP to me, but they're treating him like a nobody. David let the noise swell. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. He wanted the crowd, the eyes, the murmurs. Because when the truth surfaced, it wouldn't just humble 2 security guards. It would shake the entire stadium. The tall guard leaned in closer, his jaw tight with irritation. You've got 2 choices. Walk out with us calmly, or we drag you out in front of everyone. Don't test me. David studied him for a moment. Then with deliberate patience, he adjusted his cufflinks as though the threat were nothing more than background noise. I'm not leaving, he said simply. The younger guard exploded. That's it. Let's go. He reached out, hand closing on David's arm. But the moment his fingers touched the crisp fabric of David's jacket, David shifted, his eyes flashing. His voice, though quiet, cut sharper than any shout. I would think very carefully about that move. The younger guard froze. Something in David's tone carried weight, authority not born of arrogance, but of certainty. It rattled him, though he masked it with a scoff. Big words for someone about to get escorted off the property. David's mind flickered back briefly to the boardroom, the day the deal closed. The sellers had underestimated him at first, too. They assumed his offer was backed by unseen partners, that he was merely a face fronting someone else's fortune. They grilled him with questions no one else had faced, doubted his capacity, stalled the process. But in the end, the papers bore his name alone. The deed to the stadium, the controlling stake in the Crescent City Football Club, all of it was his. That memory grounded him now. He wasn't just standing on a field, he was standing on his field. The taller guard stepped in, trying to reassert dominance. Sir, last warning. Leave. Now. David finally let the smile curve more openly across his lips. He turned slowly, deliberately, to face the growing audience in the stands. Then he raised his voice, not shouting, but projecting with the clarity of someone used to being heard in boardrooms and on stages. Tell me something, he said, gesturing broadly across the field. When a man stands on ground he owns, does he really need permission to be here? A hush fell. The guards blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. The onlookers leaned in. What the hell is he talking about? The younger guard muttered. The taller one shook his head. Doesn't matter. He's bluffing. The younger guard lifted his radio again. Control, requesting immediate backup. Situation escalating. Static crackled, then a voice replied, Acknowledged, sending two more down. The crowd buzzed louder. A handful of employees exchanged glances that hinted at recognition. They had seen this man in passing, at a high-level meeting in the executive suites, but hadn't pieced it together until now. One whispered urgently, "Wait, isn't that—" "No, it can't be." David took a step forward, not aggressive, but commanding. His presence filled the space between them. "You see," he said evenly, "the thing about power is that it doesn't always wear a uniform or carry a radio. Sometimes it wears a suit. Sometimes it stands quietly, waiting for others to reveal their ignorance." The younger guard bristled. "Enough with the riddles, you're done here." David shook his head slowly. "No, I'm just getting started." He reached into his jacket pocket. The guards tensed immediately, hands twitching toward their belts. But instead of a weapon, David withdrew a slim leather folder. He opened it calmly, revealing embossed documents edged in gold. "This," he said, holding it where the crowd could see, "is ownership. Signed, sealed, and filed. Crescent City Football Club, stadium, field, and everything within these walls. Mine." Gas rippled through the stands. A wave of murmurs crashed like surf on rocks. The guards froze, stunned into silence. The tall guard recovered first, sneering. "Paper doesn't prove anything. Anyone could forge that." David raised a brow. "Perhaps. But anyone couldn't have their name etched into the official registry. Anyone couldn't walk into the boardroom with the legal team present and secure full controlling rights. And anyone couldn't have the general manager himself on speed dial." He tapped his phone screen, holding it up. A single contact name glowed. "General Manager, Crescent City FC." "Would you like me to call him down?" David asked. The younger guard's throat bobbed nervously. His bravado wavered. From the tunnel, whispers grew louder. Several employees had stepped fully onto the pitch now, watching with wide eyes. A few even started recording openly. "That's David Cole," one finally said aloud. "The new owner." The words spread like wildfire. Heads turned, phones captured. The tide had shifted, but the guards didn't realize it yet. The tall one doubled down, his pride unwilling to yield. "Owner or not, you still can't just stroll wherever you please." "There are protocols." David's smile faded. His voice turned colder. "Protocols? Or prejudice? Because I've noticed something. You didn't ask questions. You didn't verify credentials. You just saw a black man standing on a field and assumed he didn't belong." The crowd's reaction was instant. Sharp inhales, hushed murmurs, eyes narrowing at the guards. The younger one flushed crimson. "That's not what this is." "Isn't it?" David pressed. Backup security arrived at the tunnel entrance, hesitating when they saw the scene. The murmurs from the crowd had already reached them. They glanced between their colleagues and David, uncertain. David stood tall, leather folder in hand, the weight of truth steady on his shoulders. "I'll give you one chance," he said to the guards. "Step back. Acknowledge your mistake, or I'll let this entire stadium, this entire city watch as you try to remove the man who signs your paychecks." The taller guard's confidence faltered. His jaw clenched. He knew the crowd was no longer on his side. The taller guard's hand twitched at his belt, torn between authority and the gnawing doubt creeping into his chest. The younger guard shifted uncomfortably, his earlier bravado eroding as the weight of dozens of eyes pressed against him. David Cole stood firm, documents in hand, the crowd buzzing with whispers. Finally, the younger guard blurted, "This is ridiculous." "He's bluffing. He has to be. Why else would he be out here alone?" David's voice carried over him, calm and sharp. "Alone? Look around. Does it look like I'm alone?" The guards turned. The maintenance workers, interns, and staff who had gathered were no longer pretending to busy themselves. They were watching openly, phones raised, expressions grave. The tide had shifted. Authority was slipping. Two more security officers jogged down the tunnel, their radios crackling. They slowed as soon as they saw the scene. One well-dressed man facing off against their colleagues, a growing audience of staff encircling the standoff. "What's going on here?" one asked cautiously. The taller guard barked, "We've got an intruder on the pitch refusing to leave. He's trespassing." The newcomers exchanged glances. One of them frowned. "That's not an intruder. That's David Cole." Gasps rippled again through the crowd. The murmurs sharpened into words. It's true. He's the new owner. They're harassing him. The younger guard's face drained of color. The taller one stiffened, refusing to back down. Owner or not, he doesn't get to ignore security protocol. David turned his head, eyes narrowing. Protocol or power trip? Because let's be honest, if I looked different, dressed different, would you have stormed across the field with threats on your tongue? The backup officers shifted uncomfortably. They didn't answer, but their silence spoke volumes. Before the taller guard could retort, a new voice echoed across the pitch. What in the world is happening here? From the tunnel emerged Richard Langley, the general manager of Crescent City Football Club. Silver-haired, sharp-suited, his presence commanded instant attention. The crowd parted as he strode toward the confrontation, his eyes flicking between David and the security team. Mr. Cole, he said warmly, extending a hand. I didn't realize you'd be inspecting the pitch today. David shook his hand firmly, his gaze never leaving the guards. I wasn't aware I needed permission to step onto my own field. Langley's brow furrowed as the implication sank in. He turned sharply to the two original guards. What have you done? The younger guard stammered. We thought he was trespassing. We didn't know. That's exactly the problem, Langley snapped. You didn't ask. You didn't verify. You assumed. The taller guard tried to recover, his voice rising defensively. With all due respect, sir, we were just doing our job. Langley's voice cut like a whip. Your job is to ensure safety, not harass the man who owns the very club you work for. Do you realize how disastrous this looks? To treat our majority owner like a criminal, in front of witnesses? Phones recorded every word. The humiliation was complete. David finally stepped forward, his voice low but powerful. You didn't see me as a man in a suit. You didn't see me as someone who might belong here. You saw me as an intruder, and you moved to eject me without a second thought. That's not security, that's prejudice. The younger guard opened his mouth to protest, but no words came. David's eyes swept the crowd. This isn't about me alone. It's about everyone who has ever been told they don't belong, without anyone stopping to ask who they really are. The silence that followed was heavy, charged. Langley turned to the two guards, his decision swift and uncompromising. Hand over your radios. You're suspended immediately, pending review. Effective now. The taller guard's jaw dropped. You can't. I can, Langley said coldly. And I just did. Get off my pitch, Mr. Cole's pitch. The words landed like thunder. As the guards trudged off, faces burning with humiliation, the crowd erupted into applause. Not loud or raucous, but firm, deliberate, and unified. David stood quietly, receiving it not with arrogance, but with solemn grace. Langley turned back to David, his expression apologetic. I assure you, this will be addressed. On behalf of the staff, I'm sorry. David nodded once, then raised his voice so all could hear. Don't be sorry for me. Be sorry for the system that allows assumptions to outweigh respect. Be sorry for the silence that so often follows injustice. But don't stop at sorry. Do better. Ask questions. See people for who they are, not for what you assume them to be. The applause swelled louder this time. Phones captured every second, ensuring his words would not end here. By nightfall, the footage would spread online, igniting conversations far beyond the stadium. Later that evening, David returned to the field alone. The sun had set, stadium lights casting the pitch in silver brilliance. He walked to the center circle, placing his hands on his hips. As a boy, he had dreamed of simply entering this field. As a man, he now owned it. But more than ownership, he carried something greater: proof. Proof that no matter how deeply rooted prejudice may seem, it can be challenged. Proof that respect isn't given, it's earned, sometimes demanded. And proof that sometimes the sweetest justice isn't revenge, but revelation.